Hey, we're live Friday morning, 9 a.m. for me here in Los Angeles, lunchtime for Lauren. And what time is it for you, Arpit?
It's 9:30 p.m. Friday evening.
Okay. And for the record, we're wearing hats at the request of Arpit because he feels like, it's part of our vibe here. The best shows involve some sort of accessories. So
yeah, but it's not tinfoil this time. These are all actual hats.
Real hats.
Yes,
Actual hats. Yeah.
And we were chatting before going live, and I forgot that our usual protocol, which is we don't start with the guest, but you're here, so we're obviously not going to kick you out and bring you back. So welcome. We wanted to have you on for a long time. Tell us about yourself. Most people, I think, watching know you as Arpit from Databeats.
Arpit from Databeats. I'm based in India. I don't have a background in data. I always start by introducing myself as someone who's mainly worked in growth and marketing and product to an extent. So I actually found myself working in data when I was leading growth at a fast-growing SaaS company called Integromat, now called Make.com. And, we were growing really fast, and we were like a bootstrap company. We didn't have like crazy budgets, but we needed like data and we needed like infrastructure. So, I took it upon myself to sort of, lead our customer data infrastructure implementation in collaboration with a couple of our ace engineers. We didn't really have a single data professional. And that's when I really got into like data and got to work with data at scale. And that's when I realized that, good data is all about, making data accessible for growth. For me, at least for me, it was all about driving growth, right? I didn't really care about anything else. My job was to just drive growth and drive growth using data. This was almost 5 years back. And this is around the time when the modern data stack was just blossoming and all these new fancy tools and tech were, coming along. And, I'm obsessed with tools and technologies. I love using new tools. I love exploring, I love trying out new tools, right? And I love pushing tools to their, I love stretching them to their limits, right? Integromat, the company I worked at, like our product was a fantastic product. People used to call it the bomb. Integromat is the bomb. It was like, it is still, one of those products that's
is it like the bomb,
just a fantastic.
The bomb, or is it
the
like
bomb? The bomb.
Okay.
The bomb. Integromat is the bomb because we basically competed with Zapier. So Zapier was the biggest competitor. And people used to say Zapier is a toy compared to Integromat, and it really is. So like we had a lot of passionate users, and I was one of them. And when I started exploring all these new data tools and technologies, of course, I was evaluating them for our own purposes. We ended up not really buying a lot of these tools because we didn't really have the budgets. But once I sort of went through all of that, I realized that there's a lot of content about data, but not enough data content for non-data people like me who work in product and growth. And that's how I started putting out data content. This was just around when the pandemic hit. Content creation has always been a big part of my work. Community has been a big part of my work. So yeah, basically data growth and community. That's what I enjoy doing. And I love doing what I do today at Databeats. I'm trying to build a data community, and I'm writing a book called Good Data to Growth. So yeah, here I am.
Right on. And when you and I have chatted, several times in the past, I always think of you as the expert on, marketing data, like what's going on in the vendor world, CDPs. Like we titled this episode CDPs and Wannabes.
But when we actually discuss the formal titles within the show, we go in all directions. But let's talk about that.
I mean, what's going on in the marketing CDP landscape right now? It's just constant buzz, noise that I hear all over the place. I'll step into the arena every now and again, but what's your take on where things are at and like how this is all going? Like what's the landscape look like in your perspective?
Okay, I'm gonna switch my hat and we're going to talk about CDPs and wannabes. So it's really funny because I started writing about CDPs just around when I started writing about data, because even back then, CDPs were like really hot, early 2020. I remember when I first wrote about CDPs, I covered Intercom, for example. Intercom had like a landing page for CDPs saying that we offer a CDP as a feature. There was another company that said we have, like our product is not a CDP, but you can use it as a CDP. And then of course there were Segment and mParticle, which were the leading CDPs around the time. And this was like early 2020, and it just kept getting crazier after that. Like everyone wanted to be a CDP, and today, like what's happening? I mean, you are well versed with what's happening, Lauren, and you too, Mary. But essentially, what's happening is like everyone thinks like calling themselves a CDP is a great idea because. And that's why every organization thinks that they need a CDP. It's a really funny thing because so many of these tools have like such different capability, right? They don't really do the same things, but everyone wants to call themselves a CDP because, like marketers and growth people, they think they want CDPs. I was just chatting with someone who runs an agency, and they're like, our client is exploring, is evaluating this particular CDP. Do you know about it? And I'm like, what is it? What is it they're looking to do? And she's like, oh, we don't know. They just want to implement a CDP. So it's just become one of those things where people think they must have it. It's a must have to do something with data and to drive growth using data. And that's why everyone wants to be a CDP. But if you ask me, we didn't really have the budget for a packaged CDP. So, we didn't obviously build a CDP. We built like a very basic event tracking service. And then we used just a couple of, activation tools to like drive growth. And of course, after a while, we started hitting the limits of what our stack could do. But we achieved a lot with that. And we didn't even have a data warehouse at the time. So, it's just been like 3 years. And even today, a lot can be done without CDPs. But I think, like I said, there's this false narrative that you can't really do much without a CDP and you need a CDP, and that's why everyone wants to be a CDP. And because data warehouses have sort of become omnipresent, everyone's trying to basically say that you now need a data, like a CDP that's compatible with the data warehouse, irrespective. So a lot of companies are like, oh, we don't have a data warehouse. So first, we need to set up a data warehouse, and then we need to get a CDP, or we need to get a warehouse native CDP, or we need to get like a packaged CDP that supports the data warehouse we're looking to use. It's just crazy because at the end of the day, who is using the CDP? I mean, like data people are not really going inside.
Sometimes nobody's using
Often
CDP.
nobody, yeah.
I have seen that too. Like nobody's using the CDP. Like it's just there, right? No
Right.
one even knows who implemented the CDP or who procured the CDP. It's just like the
In
company's
case of
paying for it.
emergency, CDP on the shelf.
Right. In case one day
Yeah.
you decide to turn it on when you're, you're already, have paid for it for the last 3 years, paid $1 million a year or something. But you brought up a good point, Arpit, about like, when you rolled your own stuff at your previous company, you set up an event tracking system. I'm sure you did, there's identity resolution and reconciliation there to figure out like, who is who and how to remarket to them and things like that. Like what's going on with the whole composable CDP world right now, which is like the warehouse native topic that you brought up. Like what's going on there? Because what I've seen is, and I know a bunch of these people who run these companies or work at these companies. Like you see, companies like mParticle, they're offering warehouse stuff now. They didn't used to, but they're offering it.
Yeah.
And then all of the companies like your high touches and everything like that, like they've been pushing the composable CDP narrative for a while. Now they've started calling themselves a CDP. So a year ago, High Touch put out the famous "Friends Don't Let Friends Buy a CDP" that people either really loved or chuckled at, and now they kind of are a CDP. So like what's going on in this whole composable world? How can customers, someone who's either a marketer or a head of data or somebody like that, how can these people sift through the noise and see what's real and what's not?
Well, honestly, it's really hard to sift through the noise if you're not really like plugged in to the space. Like it's getting harder even for me, and I spend so much time just keeping track of what's going on. That's one of the main motivations for me to like put out the content that I do on Databeats. I'm also getting other industry leaders or experts or like people who've done the work to contribute to Databeats and like just share knowledge so that we can like demystify all of this like nonsense that's going on. Ultimately, a CDP is a CDP, right? It doesn't really have a definition, so everyone's like stretching the definition. And composable CDP, like, and I've actually written about it quite a bit. Composable CDP is just like a using a headless CMS, for example. You could use a headless CMS, or you could use Webflow, for example. A lot of companies choose to use Webflow, but then once they hit the limits of Webflow, they go for a headless CMS, and then it's basically a composable website stack, right? It's the same thing. I mean, ultimately, it's the same thing. It's supposed to serve the same purpose, right? Now, the main difference is that, in my opinion, here I'm sharing my opinion, that a composable CDP is not for like for organizations that are just getting started, because obviously you're dealing with more moving parts that need to be integrated really well, and integrations are not easy, right? And at the end of the day, like the people who are actually going to derive value from that infrastructure, like marketers or growth people like me, they should be willing to, they should be able to like use whatever is in place, whether it's composable or packaged. So I don't really think it's about composable versus package. It's about like, what is it that people are willing to use? Because in my experience, and like I said, I love using tools and tech. And even if you throw something at me that I've never used before, I'll try to figure it out. I will figure it out. But most people hate using new tools and, exploring new technologies. That's what I have seen, right? And now instead of, asking them to figure out this one product, let's say segment or mParticle, if you ask them to like figure out these 3-4 different tools, I don't think a lot of people are going to do that. Like most people don't really care about using tools. They just care about getting the job done.
Right.
Yeah, and they just want to get the job done, like hit their KPIs, whatever their KPIs are, right? They don't really care whether, like if you talk about email marketing or email engagement, right? Now you have like warehouse native email engagement tools. But if you ask me, I've used tools like best of breed tools like Customer.io, and they work really well. There's so much you can do with them. And if I'm happily using it, I'm running my campaigns, and then you come along and say that, hey, you should like switch to a warehouse native solution because whatever, it's cheaper and blah blah blah. Like I'm not going to do that because there's no ROI for me to switch to that solution and like move all my campaigns, and instead of using a mature product, use something that's been around only for like a couple of years. So I might be a little biased here, and I'm not really saying that composable architectures are not valuable. Of course they are, especially for large enterprises, right? But I think it's really important for people to figure out who is actually going to use the tools. Once you implement them, someone needs to use those tools and keep using those tools so that your companies are happily paying for those tools year on year. And that is really hard. People move on, people switch jobs, and someone new comes in. They don't even know. This has happened with me. I was that new guy who joined a company, and like I was asking all these questions, and nobody had answers, and nobody frankly cared.
There's no documentation, probably. Like it's just
no one really cared. They were like, why are you even asking these questions? Just like run this webinar or send these emails. That's why we hired you. So yeah, I think that's like a problem. Companies love spending on technology, but very few people actually want to use a lot of tools, and it's really hard to get people to use tools.
Do you have an example of a company that, in your view, is doing, could be big, medium-sized, small company, doing customer data right? And if so, sort of what's their stack, or what's key to why they're doing it right?
I can't think of like specific names, but I could talk about Integromat a lot because I was like really involved in setting everything up. But there are a lot of B2C brands that do a fairly good job. Actually, Canva is a really good example now that you're asking. Canva is really, really good. The way they like everything they do, I really like appreciate all their efforts, and they really care about the customer experience. And they use obviously a lot of tools, and they use a composable stack, for example. They use census for reverse ETL, and I'm not sure what else they use, but they do a good job. But uh, it's funny because I actually tend to like notice companies that are not doing a good job,
Sure.
because when someone's doing a good job, you don't really, there's not much for you to like really notice. You're just having a good experience, right? But a lot of companies are not doing a good job. You like even simple stuff like, someone unsubscribes from an email, you got to remove them from your campaigns. But, like you've removed them from one tool, but 5 different teams are using 5 different email tools. You're still getting emails. Even simple stuff like that is not happening properly. The other day, I even wrote about it on LinkedIn. Suddenly receive a welcome email from a product I've been using for like more than a year, and I actually wrote to them saying that, hey, I'm not a new customer, so I'm not sure why I'm receiving this email. And the CEO replied saying that, hey, we just we hired someone new, and they just made some changes on customer IO, and that just triggered the welcome email to all existing customers. And I'm like, that's really odd, because these things shouldn't happen, and these are things that you notice, right? But yeah, the loss of, I think when companies are doing a good job with their customer data stack, like most people wouldn't notice. They'll just
It
have a good
becomes
experience.
seamless. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, not many people are doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, and to your point too about like, you might delete them from one system, a customer, like, excuse me, a common thing that I've seen in the last couple of years is a lot of organizations, like they get some kind of data request to remove a customer can write in and get a GDPR request, and they want their stuff removed from the company. Now, what this does is it sets off a trail of silliness or nonsense or whatever you want to call it, because you might delete them from a certain database, but you have 5 other SaaS tools that you're not deleting them from, and then they will get another email, and then they'll be mad and send angry emails, and then go on Twitter and threaten to sue you or whatever, and all things that I've seen. And yeah, I mean, the systems complexity problem is really something that I've seen. Everyone can talk about SaaS bloat and, hey, how many vendors do we really have, or how many do we really need, or things like that. But yeah, it's becoming a problem because these things are like regulations. Like there are laws that say like, hey, like if someone makes this request, you have to delete them, and then you have to go chase down this customer in 5 different places. So yeah, totally agree with that.
I mean, from what I've seen and my understanding is that it's the only organizations that are even attempting to really follow those regulations are the very big companies, because they're the only ones that are facing fines. So the reality,
exactly.
Smaller companies is it's like absolutely none of that is. There's not even an attempt to truly respect those data privacy.
Yeah, I mean, I find it odd because like when I was doing this at Integromat, and GDPR had just like it was still in force, but it was still early days, and my goal was to provide the customer or the user with a superior experience. Like why should companies do this stuff or invest in these systems just because there's a law, and they might be subject to fines? They should do it if they actually care about providing the customer, the user, with a superior experience, which is what everyone talks about, right? You need to activate data and build good customer experiences. But what does it even mean? Like, what do you mean by a good customer experience? Like not sending an email they didn't ask for is a good customer experience, right? If someone is facing an issue, right? If they have an open support ticket, and then making sure that until their issue is resolved, you don't like reach out with like a sales email or things like that. But how do you even orchestrate those things when all of these systems are like basically disparate systems. None of these systems are talking to each other, right? Like my support email is being addressed by someone else. Here, the sales team is trying to hit their quota, so they're sending me emails. I'm still receiving emails from the product marketing team or whatever, the growth team was trying to get me to use the product or register for a webinar, and here I'm stuck with an issue. So these things are like basic things, right, if you think about it, but they're not easy to implement. But these are things that people should care about. It's the little things that matter, right? It's not about like activating data and running like crazy campaigns and like spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on ads and making sure those ads are personalized. I mean, like for me, like if I put on my growth hat, this is my growth hat,
I love that you have the hats, because people are like, oh, I'm going to put on my product manager hat today. Oh, now I'm going to put on my sales hat. And you have the actual hats. So it's excellent.
So when I think of growth, I'm just trying to think of the little thing that I can improve, the incremental improvements that I can do on a day-to-day basis, right? And those little things actually compound, make a lot of difference, right? But you really have to care about growth and the customer experience, right? There are people who obviously care about growth, but they don't care about the customer experience. I think a lot of people are just motivated by their own internal KPIs. So they're like, as long as we hit our KPIs, we don't really care about anything else, right? And that's an experience I've had personally, where just to hit KPIs, I was asked to like send like 3 emails to our entire customer base, just so that we hit like a number for the number of registrations we get for a webinar. And I'm like, 3 emails for one webinar over a period of like 1 week is crazy. Like, why would you do that? They're like, just do it. Who cares, right? We want the numbers so that we can present the numbers in our whatever weekly review meeting or whatever. I'm like, I mean, that sucks, right? Like, I wouldn't want to be the person doing this stuff. So I think a lot of it, like, I think the bigger problems are like people problems. It's nothing new, right? It's like lack of alignment, lack of ownership. Someone will buy like a CDP, but someone needs to really own it and make sure that it's implemented properly. And not enough people care about that stuff. I think that's the problem. And no amount of composable stack or like no amount of like modern technology or warehouse native tech is going to solve that, because I mean these solutions have a lot of merit, but they're actually also more complicated, right? So yeah, I'm a little wary of all this chatter, right? And
Well,
the
yeah,
confusion.
one thing that I appreciate about your LinkedIn posts and your Substack is that you don't hesitate to call out the bullshit, which most people aren't afraid to just sort of say that frankly, and you say it in a very calm and honest way. The fact that so much of these marketing campaigns are not just based on half truths, but also detrimental to learning and the overall discourse. So, and I'm curious what sort of has given you that sort of, I guess, lack of fear in terms of just what you think is the truth.
I think the fact that, I mean, there's a lot to it. I mean, that's a loaded question, because, I have this quote. I'm a huge Jim Morrison fan, as you can see. And he used to say, I'm the lizard king and I can do anything. And I truly believe in that, because I'm not like scared of anything. So, like calling people out. I mean, I don't want to like, shame people or, like pick battles. I don't want to like waste my energy on those things.
It's not gratuitous.
When I find something frustrating, because I'm really passionate about what I do, right? And I'm like, I want to like demystify the space. I want like more, non-data people to understand data, because it's amazing. Once you understand how data works, it just unlocks a whole new world for you, especially if you don't work in data, right? But these vendors come along, and a lot of them have like copied my stuff. They've, ripped off my content, my diagrams. And then I didn't mind it, because they were still like just spreading my message and, just whatever. They were doing the same thing that I was trying to do, but now a bunch of them are just trying to like create confusion. And why are they doing it? Just because they want to like increase their valuation, right? Like if you ask some of these people, not many of these people have actually ran growth. They don't really understand what it is to like run growth on a day-to-day basis, right? It's not just about like saving 2 months on an implementation. What do you do with those 2 months? Even if you save 2 months, like it's really that's not the goal, right? The goal is not to like save 2 months on the implementation, or the goal is not to activate the data or to move the data from system A to system B, right? The ultimate goal is to drive ROI and drive growth. And growth could mean like more revenue, or it could mean a bunch of things, like more satisfied customers, or whatever. It could be so many different things, more efficiency, right? So yeah.
What about right. What so with all this customer data, right? Like I mean, it's very obvious that retaining a customer, someone who's bought your product or service or whatever before, is cheaper than acquiring a customer because of paid ad spend and whatever effort you took to get someone the first time onto whatever you're selling as a customer. How does this retention play in now that like things are all the growth boom has been down for a year? Maybe like I've seen a lot of companies, they're not spending as much on customer acquisition necessarily. If they're doing paid stuff, that's a very hard game because Google and Facebook and everybody else, like they own that. And like how is this whole like acquisition versus retention trade-off working? And I see that even as you have your own brand and your own customer, so how are you balancing all the retention versus acquisition and where to put money in?
So today I'm not really selling anything, on Databeats. So I'll actually answer that question using my experience again from Integromat days. So it's really amazing. We didn't spend a dime on paid marketing. All of our acquisition was organic through content and community efforts. We had a discovery problem. People didn't know that this product existed, but once people knew about it, people would either fall in love with it, or they would be like, "Oh, it's too complicated for me. I'd rather stick to something simple like Zapier," which was fine, right? So to understand, what's going on, like most of our users were already coming from our competitor, from Zapier, right? They were either looking for something more powerful or actually cheaper, because we were also cheaper. So I started implementing so we implemented an onboarding survey and an exit survey, right? We want to understand why people were coming to Integromat. Was it the price? Were they actually looking for a better product, more capability? And then when they would downgrade or cancel, we had like a really detailed survey, right? And then based on the responses, I would actually reach out to people. And the survey was constantly evolving. If someone told me something like, "Oh, we actually canceled just because we'd hired an agency or like an individual who was like running all these automation, and they're not working with us anymore, so we don't have anyone to manage this for us, so that's why we're canceling. We still really like your product." So I would like add that as an option in the survey. So it was just about understanding what's going on, why people were like downgrading or churning, and the people who were happier, of course, like just trying to like get them to increase usage. Now, how do you get them to increase usage? Like if you have the right data and you have basic tools in place, you can like keep pushing them to try new things. Like, of course, the product has to be good. And we had like a fantastic product with so many capabilities. Like most of the features were unused. There was so much to like offer to customers who were already like happy with it. It wasn't a problem. If you don't have a good product and if you don't have a lot more to offer, then obviously it becomes challenging. But then it's really important for you to understand why people are churning. And like for example, we started offering professional services, although we were again a tiny bootstrap company. A lot of the professional services work was being done by me and a couple of our support people. But then we kept getting more and more requests. So we realized that maybe we should like start putting these requests out in our community, for example. We started doing that, and eventually that led to our channel partner program. Yeah? And eventually when it launched, it had like some 200, 300 partners. Now it has like today, I think it has more than 1,000 partners, people who are implementing the product. So it's just about understanding what customers want, giving them that. We had a very active community. People loved the product. So the challenge was just to understand who they are and what is it that they're looking for. There were people who would come to our product just because it was cheaper. It was cheaper, but it had a steeper learning curve. So it just wasn't for them. And we didn't even try to pursue them. And then gradually we had like, bigger companies coming to us. And of course, I mean, as it always happens, right? Once large companies start coming in, deal sizes start getting bigger, your priorities start shifting. I mean, all of that happened, but we still stayed true to our core product. And even today, I keep saying we because I love the product so much. I'm a happy customer today. I still use it every day. So I think people who are selling these products, they have to really like love what they're selling. I think not enough people are like actually passionate about the problems they're solving. I've actually had some conversations with founders, and they're like, "Oh, we are building this thing, but we're not so passionate about it or whatever. We're just doing it because it seems like a good problem to solve, seems like a good business, but." You have to have that passion. Otherwise, when things get tough, it just gets tough.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh yeah, switching lanes a little bit. Like I've asked you this before when we've talked, but I'm curious. Like you're based in Kolkata in India.
Yeah.
And like what is it like working with a lot of American like right now it's like 9:30, almost 10 o'clock your time.
Yeah.
What is it like working with like US or European companies or companies anywhere like else in the world when you're in Kolkata, and then even in India, like a lot of the startup scene, tech scene, there's Bangalore, there's
Yeah.
I mean Delhi's big, but yeah, what is it like building your community and stuff out in Kolkata, which is not somewhere a lot of people think of when they say tech in India first.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah. I'm gonna put on my community hat now that we're talking about community. Okay.
I love that.
I'm glad you brought it up because I love talking about this stuff. So there are pros and cons, right? It's not easy because like I'm always working online. I don't really interact with like people here. In a sense, I don't interact with people about work. I don't talk to people about work. I don't really go out, and I don't really interact with a lot of Indian companies for whatever reason, because I've been working with European companies for a long time and now American companies for like 2 or 3 years. So, I mean, I really love it because it really works well with my routine and what I'm looking to do. Right. I don't like to. I actually once worked with like one of the American companies I worked with. It was a very meeting heavy culture, right? Like lots and lots of meetings, and I find meetings very draining. I like to do my work in solace and peace, and I like to write, I like to think, and I like to read, and that's why it works really well for me, because my mornings till like late evening my time, like there's absolutely no disturbance, right? There are no calls, people are asleep. Even in the communities, there's not much activity, so I can focus my time doing what I enjoy doing and what I'm good at, right? And then I do all my calls late evening, around this time, I like from like 8:30 or 9 p.m. my time up until 10:30 or 11. And it's not too bad. It works really well for me, and yeah, I mean, the cons. Okay, let's talk about the cons. The loss of cons. Obviously, I don't get to be there for in-person meetings, events, or like meet people in person, which is obviously it's a good thing if you can do that, right? It is hard also because if you do feel isolated, right? I mean, you're just doing stuff by yourself. And like I said, I've tried, talking to people in India over here about the work I do, but very few people are interested or care about this stuff, especially community building and stuff. I keep looking at my website stats and stuff. Like the biggest traffic I get is from the US, followed by Europe, and then India. I would want more people in India to like know about the work I'm doing, and I would like to like collaborate with more Indians, but I've tried doing that. It just hasn't worked well for me. Maybe it's just the way I like to do things. I mean, not to like bitch about Indians, but like a lot of people in India are like they don't respect your time. It's like very normal. It's normal to be late. It's normal to like just not be very professional. Again, this doesn't apply to everyone, right? I'm just sharing my own experience.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And on the flip side, have you experienced, we obviously in our show, we're kind of mocking the stereotypical Silicon Valley tech bro culture.
Yeah.
Have you experienced, as someone who's based in India, sort of ever a patronizing or condescending, tone towards you because you're based in India?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like a lot of times it's not very obvious, but absolutely, and I've worked with enough people to experience that. And I think a lot of people just see that I'm based in Kolkata in India, and like eastern part of India, and they're like, oh, whatever. I think people do get judgmental looking at your location. It's funny because sometime back, me and a couple of people I know, we were nominated for some awards, Analytics Pioneer Awards, and this other person said that you and I were the only diversity in there. So I don't really see myself as diversity, because in India I'm like normal, but I'm actually diversity in like on a global level. And that really hit me. I actually thought about it. The fact that I'm diversity, I don't really realize that because I'm not amongst white people in my physical world. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Well, I find that what we're talking about in the past couple of questions and with your comments are topics that it's not like super deep, but they're just basic things that need to be discussed and acknowledged in the tech community, and most people are afraid to touch any of this with a 10-foot pole. I don't know if it's out of fear of being sued or fear of saying the wrong thing. It's also something that I appreciate in your writing, Lauren, that you refer to, some of these, whether they're gender or ethnic hierarchies within the tech community, that, all sorts of different types of racism and discrimination happening between
even money wise, like some people
ethnic groups. Sorry, go
yeah, I've also been told that, oh, you're in India, why you shouldn't be charging so much. I mean, like that sucks, right? And some really big companies and good companies and companies that talk about diversity, like I've heard these things from them, like, oh, we pay as per whatever. Like I'm like, I don't really work with Indian companies, or the work I'm doing shouldn't really like. Why should you care about where I'm based as long as the work is happening, right?
It's the same work regardless.
So. Yeah. So that's something I've been subject to many times. So yeah, but I don't really care, because for me, like money is not the biggest motivator, so it works well. It's also an advantage because I'm in India. I don't really need to earn that much, So
don't say that out loud.
Negotiate up.
Gotta keep those rates high, right?
No, I'm not. I'm still going to keep my rates high. I'm not going to bring them down. Yeah. It's just that I don't have to like keep hustling, right? And gives me the time to like do my own thing.
Not like being based
that's the advantage.
LA or New York, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I've been to the US multiple times, and it's just hard to be there. I think it's really expensive, and that's why like the fact that I'm able to do this work from here is definitely an advantage. So yeah, of course it's not easy, but there are a lot of pros as well. Yeah.
And then so you're writing a book now as well. And
Yes.
yeah, how's that go? Like, how are you approaching, writing the book? Are you just putting like there's two types of writers, and I have friends who've not only written like tech books, but are published authors of fiction and things. And there's two types of writers. There's always the people who want to plan things out meticulously and say like, here's point one, point two, point three. Here's the other, and they plan it all out. They plot out their story, and then they attack it piece by piece. Then there's the people who the other group just has to get everything on the page, and then tinker with it later. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
like this is the first book you've written. Like how are you
Writing, yes.
learning about how you write a book,
Yeah.
and what are you approaching with the book? Like what?
Yeah, so it's a first time experience. I thought it'll be easy because I've been writing a long time, but writing a book is very different than writing, articles and blog posts, right? So with online content, right, there's always a structure, and it's easy to like get done with the writing and then do a round of editing and be done with it. But with the book, that's not really the case. So I'm experimenting. I started by putting down all the things I wanted to cover. I actually started with the model. So I wanted to like create a visual representation of the problem that I'm trying to sort of solve with all my efforts, right? And I want to create I want to like visually depict how organizations can turn data into growth. So I did that. I spent like 2-3 months working on this visual model, refining it, and then that sort of realized that sort of made me realize that I could turn this into a book, because when I started writing, I thought I'll just publish a bunch of blog posts, like 5-6 blog posts. But once I started writing, I was like, I just had so much more to write, and I'm like, okay, maybe this should be a book. So I did put down a bunch of topics, but I'm not really like sticking to them, because as I'm writing, I'm finding myself exploring a lot of things and like writing about things that I've never really shared with people, mostly like from my personal experience. So it's not just like it's not at all an instructional book where I'm saying do this or do that, right? A step-by-step guide. It's more about sharing my own story and in the context of data and growth, right? And it's very hard. I'm finding it to be much harder than I anticipated, but it's also a lot of fun. Because like I said, it's enabling me to write about stuff that I would otherwise not really write about, and yeah, I'm really enjoying the process, but it's not easy. But I'm not like married to any specific. I've been in fact, when I started writing, I wrote like some 3,000-4,000 words, and later when I look back at it, and I'm like, when I decided to turn it into a book, I realized that the content I'd written doesn't really fit into the structure of a book, because I'd written those as like individual blog posts, right? So I got rid of it and started writing again. So yeah, it's just an iterative process, and I have a lot of respect for like authors. I always had, but now I realize that it's much harder than it seems to write a book. If I had to write 10 articles, I could do it in like a few weeks, but writing a book is a lot harder. But yeah, it's a fun experience, and like I said, I'm really enjoying it.
That's great, and it's
and yeah, is this aimed at like people who like don't know anything about growth and might want to get into it? Is it for people who maybe they know growth but they don't know anything about data? Like who's your ideal audience, and who you're writing
right.
for?
The latter, like folks who work in growth, right? Now, growth could mean many things, but the way I define growth is basically like anyone who's working on, like basically people who are working on getting people to getting users to become activated users and then retained users. So not so much marketing, but like someone like me, right? I was doing a bit of marketing, but mainly growth work. Some companies would call it product growth. But yes, basically someone who works in growth, who has some experience, may not have like a ton of experience. It's not really a 101 book, right? So people who work in growth but want to understand how to drive data powered growth, right? You can drive growth using a lot of things. You can do a lot of ads and stuff like that, but even when you do ads, you're just doing acquisition, right? Like someone needs to take those users and get them to become customers, and that's what I define growth as, right? So So yeah, people who work at the intersection of product and growth would be the right audience, and folks who want to, use data. And a lot of people who reach out to me, they're like, sometimes they're product managers, sometimes, like the roles are very, very diverse, but they're interested in using data to better understand their users and customers and get them to like use their products more or buy their products more, right? So that's the right audience. It's not really being written with, obviously it's basically being written for someone like me, like who I was 5 years ago, who's really passionate about growth, who wants to like learn about data and use data to drive growth, but isn't really sure how to go about it.
What are we looking at as a timeline? You think a year from now you'll be back to announce the publication of the
Oh
book?
no,
You haven't.
not at all. I want to do it much sooner. So my plan is to
Okay.
release it. Yeah, my plan is to release it as a work in progress book.
Mhm.
My friend Timo, he did this,
Yeah.
and that's where I sort of got inspired by the idea where instead of writing the book for like 6 months and then releasing it, once I'm happy with like the first, once I'm through the like at least 50% of the book, I'm going to start releasing. I'm going to release it. People can buy it, and then they start getting like one chapter every week or every 2 weeks, every week actually. And then that's why it'll be like a work in progress book, and it'll be done over like there'll be like 10 or 12 chapters, and once it's complete, then it'll definitely be available as a digital book. But I'm looking to do more around the book content, because the book is just it's just an excuse to like get people to sort of better understand what I'm talking about. I actually want
And get
more
more
people
conversations
to,
going, better conversations. Yeah.
yeah, and I want more people to like basically use data in their day to day to drive growth. And if they need like more than a book, if they need a community or whatever else, I'm going to try and offer that, right? But yeah, my goal is to like release the book within a few weeks. I keep saying few weeks, but it's probably going to take a month. But yeah, I'm hoping to like have it like complete it, finish it by the end of January.
Fantastic.
I'm already
Yeah.
thinking about yeah.
So you're
I'm
gonna
already
need
thinking about
your author hat for that show.
Yeah, you're gonna need a new hat, a book hat.
new author hat.
Oh, you already have one.
Okay.
Uh,
I mean, this is the one I started with.
Okay.
The author hat.
we have to. Lauren, what hat are you wearing today? I can't see what's written on
Oh,
there.
this is a
Oh, your Virginia hat.
this is a Virginia one. I can do the Nationals one, the Washington Nationals, long since eliminated from World Series contention. Yeah, I've got a bunch of hats lying around as well.
I've got my UV protection hat, which can look very Darth Vader. But I've never actually worn it for this long, so it's started to give me a headache. I have to take it off. But well, this has been fantastic. So we've had a lot of viewer comments. We've been seeing them, even though we haven't been responding to them. And let's end on this. Someone, I can't see the name, but someone asked, Arpit, are you driving a parallel here with personal growth, between business growth and personal growth? That's a deep question.
Wow. I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but I mean, yeah, like people like, okay, that's actually okay. Now I kind of understand it.
Yeah, it takes
yeah. There's definitely like, yeah, there's an element of personal growth for sure. Like if you're interested in doing data and not really being a data professional, as in being a data engineer or data analyst, if you want to be a data engineer, great, it's a great career to have. But there are folks like me who really enjoy what they do, right? They don't want to like switch careers and become like an analyst or an engineer, but they would benefit by understanding certain aspects of data, or like learning certain aspects of data, or understanding how data is collected and stored and analyzed and activated or whatever. It obviously unlocks it can be great for your career. It can unlock a lot of opportunities, but it also unlocks a lot of things that you can do, right? That's what happened with me. So yeah, there's definitely that personal growth element. I think I want more people to do this work and enjoy doing it, rather than like my central idea is basically the semi-technical professional. You don't have to be technical to do like technical work, right? You don't have to write code. Like, with Integromat, our whole premise was, using like a visual automation no-code tool to build these really complex integrations and scenarios. We used to call them scenarios, but basically really complex integrations that were not possible without code, prior to, a product like Integromat. So, and it's amazing the kind of things people would build, the kind of things I've built. So yeah, that's my central idea, and I'm right now applying it to data. But I think it's not just about data, right? If you are semi-technical and you understand technology and you're passionate about it, you can just do so many fun things. And I do a lot of those fun things. It just I don't really get to talk about those fun things. So yeah, like data is just I'm really interested in data, but I think there's more to it, right? Like, so there's definitely that personal growth element, and of course there's the business growth element as well. But yeah, if you ask me, I'm probably more driven by the personal growth element. So yeah, thank you for that question, whoever.
That was fun, by the way. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, that's a great place to wrap up. So thanks, Arpit. This has been fantastic.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
And end of Friday for you over there. Lauren, any final words?
No, not on my end. But Arpit, where can people find you? Where can they go to your site or learn more about you?
So yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to reach out to me. I have a simple rule. I accept every connection request and I reply to every message. So just, feel free to reach out. And my website is databeats.community. So check it out. There's a lot of free content. And right now, all of it is free. That might change in the future, but right now everything's free. And we've recently improved the website to make a lot of the content discoverable, like existing past content, which is a lot of it is more relevant than it was when it was written. So yeah, have a look. And then if you have questions, just, reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks so much, Arpit. Thanks, Lauren. And we'll see everybody next Friday.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.